3 months after the invasion began, Supreme Commander Veltar was feeling something he had never experienced in 3 centuries of conquest. Confusion. His forces controlled every major strategic point on the planet his fleet dominated, Earth's orbit completely, and by every measure the Empire used to judge victory, the humans should have surrendered weeks ago. Instead, they seemed to be getting more dangerous. The problem was not that human resistance was getting stronger. The opposite was true. Every regular human military unit had been destroyed or scattered. Their space fleet was nothing but floating debris. Their major cities were radioactive holes. By all rights, this should have been the cleanup phase, but somehow the humans had turned defeat into something else entirely. Colonel Dan Murphy showed this transformation perfectly. A former Army Ranger, he had watched his unit get wiped out in the first week of fighting. Instead of surrendering or running away, he had disappeared into the mountains of Colorado with a handful of survivors and begun what could only be described as a graduate course in guerrilla warfare. The aliens controlled the highways, so Murphy's people moved through abandoned mine shafts and natural cave systems. The aliens controlled the airspace, so human fighters learned to move at night underground or during the massive dust storms that now swept across the damaged landscape. The aliens had better sensors, so humans began using their own technology against them. Dr. Sarah Kim's research team had made several crucial discoveries by studying wreckage from destroyed Empire ships. The aliens' quantum communication systems, designed to coordinate their fleet instantly across vast distances, had an interesting weakness. They could be hijacked if you knew exactly what frequencies to use and had enough computing power to break their codes. Earth's entire internet had been turned into a massive computing network. Every smartphone, every gaming console, every smart appliance that had survived the bombing was now part of a system dedicated to cracking alien communication codes. The project was led by tech mogul Steve Harrison, who had turned his company's server farms into the backbone of the Resistance's cyber warfare division. The breakthrough came when Harrison's team successfully intercepted and decoded an Empire tactical briefing. For the first time, humans could listen to alien military communications in real time. What they learned changed everything. The Empire was not just technologically superior, they were also completely predictable. Their military doctrine had remained unchanged for centuries because it had never needed to change. Every species they encountered fought the same way. Large formations, conventional tactics, surrender when facing overwhelming odds. Humans were the first species to deliberately scatter their forces, abandon conventional strategy, and keep fighting when victory was impossible. Captain Lisa Wong, a former Air Force pilot, put this knowledge to devastating use. Her squadron had been flying captured alien shuttles modified with human weapons and crammed with barely functional human technology. They were outgunned, outmanned, and flying ships that were held together with spare parts and determination, but they were also completely unpredictable. When Empire forces moved to secure what appeared to be a human weapons cache, Wong's squadron would hit their rearguard. When aliens tried to establish communication relay stations, human fighters would appear from underground tunnels they should not have been able to dig. When Empire commanders tried to coordinate their forces, they would find their communications jammed by signals that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. The psychological impact was enormous. Empire soldiers had been trained to fight enemies who followed established patterns of warfare. They had no idea how to deal with opponents who seemed to appear out of thin air, strike without warning, and vanish before retaliation was possible. But the real genius of human resistance was not military, it was social. Dr. Alex Turner had spent months studying captured Empire propaganda broadcasts and interrogation records. What he discovered was that the Empire's greatest strength was also its greatest weakness: complete conformity. Every species the Empire had conquered had been integrated into their social structure exactly the same way. Alien civilians became workers. Alien soldiers became Empire troops. Alien leaders were either killed or forced into subordinate administrative roles. The process was efficient, predictable, and completely dependent on the conquered species accepting their new role in the galactic hierarchy. Humans refused to accept any role the Empire tried to assign them. When aliens tried to use human prisoners as workers, the humans would sabotage equipment, slow production, and organize strikes that crippled entire industrial operations. When the Empire tried to recruit human soldiers, they found that humans would join their ranks just long enough to steal weapons, gather intelligence, and escape back to the Resistance. When alien administrators tried to establish puppet governments, human leaders would agree to cooperate right up until the moment they turned the alien supply chains against their occupiers. The most devastating example was the Detroit incident. Colonel Rachel Kim, a former intelligence officer, had allowed herself to be captured and appointed as the regional human administrator. For 2 months, she faithfully carried out Empire orders, organizing human labor crews and establishing the infrastructure the aliens needed to strip Earth's resources. Then on a single coordinated day, every human worker under her command simultaneously sabotaged every piece of Empire equipment they could reach. Fusion reactors overloaded, transport ships crashed, communication arrays went offline, and entire military bases lost power. The damage took weeks to repair, and the Empire never figured out how Kim had coordinated such a massive operation under their own surveillance. The answer was simple. She had not needed to coordinate anything. She had simply told her people that when the time was right, they would know what to do. And humans, it turned out, were very good at knowing when the time was right. By month 4, Veltar was facing something that Empire military doctrine had no provisions for. An occupied planet that was becoming more expensive to hold than it was worth. His forces were taking steady casualties from an enemy that could not win but refused to lose. His supply lines were constantly disrupted by attacks that seemed to come from the planet's very infrastructure. And his own soldiers were beginning to show signs of the psychological strain that came from fighting an enemy they could not understand. The breaking point came during what became known as the Great Sabotage. On a single day coordinated across 12 time zones, every piece of Empire equipment on Earth simultaneously malfunctioned. Not randomly, but specifically in ways that helped human resistance and hurt alien operations. Communication jammers that had been suppressing human radio traffic suddenly began amplifying resistance broadcasts instead. Transport ships loaded with alien reinforcements found their navigation systems reprogrammed to deliver them directly into human ambushes. Even the environmental systems in Empire bases began creating conditions that favored human physiology over alien requirements. The aliens had superior technology, better weapons, and complete orbital control. But they were fighting an enemy that had turned the very concept of technology into a weapon. Every circuit, every processor, every quantum relay had become a potential saboteur, working against the Empire's interests. Dr. Sarah Kim's Prometheus virus had evolved beyond its original programming. It was learning from each system it infiltrated, adapting to new forms of alien technology, and developing capabilities the humans had never built into it. It was not just disrupting Empire operations anymore, it was actively teaching resistance tactics to any system it encountered. But Veltar was a veteran of countless campaigns. He had one final option that had never failed to break a species' resistance: total annihilation. If humans would not surrender, he would simply kill them all and strip the planet bare. The order went out to prepare for planetary sterilization. Within days, the Empire's orbital bombardment platforms would reduce Earth's surface to molten rock, eliminating the human infestation once and for all. What Veltar did not know was that humans had been preparing for this possibility since the day the Empire arrived, and their final gambit was about to turn the entire galactic balance of power upside down. The Empire's response was quick and devastating. Energy beams that could crack planets shot down from orbit, turning entire cities into glass craters within seconds. New York, London, Tokyo, Beijing. Each city that had been a symbol of human achievement was reduced to radioactive ash in minutes. But humanity's leaders had expected this. President Santos and the Global Defense Council had emptied the major cities weeks before moving essential people to underground bunkers and mobile command centers scattered across remote areas. Phasing. One complete, reported General Hayes from his command bunker buried deep under the Rocky Mountains. Casualties are within acceptable limits. The aliens had expected this first strike to break human resistance completely. Instead, it seemed to make it stronger. What Veltar did not understand was that humans had been preparing for exactly this scenario. Dr. Alex Turner's research had not just been about understanding alien communication, it had been about understanding alien psychology and tactics. Every species the Empire had conquered had collapsed after losing their major cities. Humans had deliberately made themselves harder to destroy. The real surprise came when the Empire's landing ships began coming down to secure key strategic points. They met resistance that made no sense according to all military logic. In the ruins of Los Angeles, a group of civilians led by former Marine John Davis had turned the city's subway system into a deadly maze of bombs and kill zones. When the first wave of alien soldiers came out of their ships, they found themselves facing not scared refugees, but determined fighters who knew every inch of the urban landscape. The aliens were better in every way. Their armor could stop most human weapons, their shields could absorb tremendous damage, and their own weapons could cut through steel like paper. But they had never faced an enemy that refused to retreat when outgunned, or that turned their own advantages against them. Private First Class. Amy Rodriguez discovered that while alien armor could stop bullets, it could not stop gravity. When she brought down a highway bridge on top of an alien patrol, she killed more enemy soldiers in 30 seconds than Earth's entire space fleet had managed in the opening battle. The city fighting was brutal and chaotic, but it showed something the Empire had never seen before. Humans got more dangerous when they were desperate, not less dangerous. Meanwhile, in orbit, Jake Morrison was learning hard lessons about space combat against a much stronger enemy. The UES Liberty had been humanity's most advanced warship, but it was barely holding together under fire from a single alien frigate. Hull breach on decks 7 and 8, reported his tactical officer, Lieutenant Ben Carter. "We are losing air fast. Take power from life support and put it into weapons," Morrison ordered. "If we are going down, we are taking them with us." It was a desperate move, but it worked. The Liberty's final torpedo spread, launched just before the ship broke apart, managed to get through the alien frigate's shields when they dropped for a moment to deliver a killing blow. Both ships died together in a brilliant explosion that lit up Earth's night sky. The sacrifice was not wasted. Human observers had been studying the alien technology carefully, and Lieutenant Carter's final sensor readings showed a crucial weakness in the Empire's shield systems. The information was sent to Earth just before the Liberty was destroyed, giving humanity its first real tactical advantage. But the cost was becoming clear. Earth was burning. Millions were dead. The Empire's forces were moving forward steadily across every continent, and humanity's regular forces were being destroyed one by one. In his command bunker, Admiral Lisa Brooks reviewed the tactical situation with growing despair. "We are losing on every front," she reported to President Santos. "At this rate, organized resistance will collapse within weeks." Santos nodded grimly. "Then it is time for Phase 2. Activate the Prometheus Protocol." The Prometheus Protocol was humanity's ultimate backup plan, developed in secret over the past decade by Dr. Sarah Kim and a team of the world's smartest scientists. It was based on a simple idea. If humanity could not win a fair fight, they would not fight fair. The plan involved turning every part of human civilization into a weapon, from communication satellites to civilian infrastructure. More importantly, it involved using the Empire's own technology against them through a combination of cyber warfare, reverse engineering, and what could only be described as controlled chaos. As the order went out to activate Prometheus resistance cells across Earth began using tactics that would have shocked the Empire's leadership if they had understood what was coming. Humans, it turned out, were very good at learning from their enemies, and they were even better at turning those lessons into something unexpected. The change started small. Empire patrols began reporting equipment failures that made no sense. Communication arrays would work perfectly until the moment they tried to coordinate attacks on human positions, then they would fail completely. Transport ships would function normally until they were loaded with troops heading to assault resistance bases, then their navigation systems would malfunction. Colonel Dan Murphy and his mountain fighters were among the first to notice the pattern. "Their technology is not failing randomly," he reported to command. "It is failing specifically when they try to use it against us." Dr. Sarah Kim's team had made the breakthrough weeks earlier. The alien quantum communication systems that coordinated their fleet instantly across vast distances had an interesting weakness. They could be hacked if you knew exactly what frequencies to use and had enough computing power to break their encryption. Earth's entire internet had been turned into a massive computing system. Every smartphone, every gaming console, every smart device that had survived the bombing was now part of a network dedicated to cracking alien communication codes. The project was led by tech billionaire Steve Harrison, who had turned his company's server farms into the backbone of the Resistance's cyber war division. The breakthrough came when Harrison's team successfully intercepted and decoded an Empire tactical briefing. For the first time, humans could listen to alien military communications in real time. What they learned changed everything. The Empire was not just technologically superior, they were also completely predictable. Their military doctrine had remained the same for centuries because it had never needed to change. Every species they encountered fought the same way. Large formations, conventional tactics, surrender. When facing overwhelming odds, humans were the first species to deliberately scatter their forces, abandon conventional strategy, and keep fighting when victory was impossible. Captain Lisa Wong, a former Air Force pilot, put this knowledge to devastating use. Her squadron had been flying captured alien shuttles modified with human weapons and held together with spare parts and determination. They were outgunned, outmanned, and flying ships that barely worked. But they were also completely unpredictable. When Empire forces moved to secure what appeared to be a human weapons cache, Wong's squadron would hit their rear guard. When aliens tried to establish communication relay stations, human fighters would appear from underground tunnels they should not have been able to dig. When Empire commanders tried to coordinate their forces, they would find their communications jammed by signals that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. The psychological impact was enormous. Empire soldiers had been trained to fight enemies who followed established patterns of warfare. They had no idea how to deal with opponents who seemed to appear out of thin air, strike without warning, and vanish before retaliation was possible. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Liberty watching as the massive alien fleet appeared in Earth's orbit. 300 warships, each the size of a small city, cast shadows across the blue planet humanity called home. The alien vessels were dark and dangerous looking, with hulls that seemed to absorb light and make even brave officers feel nervous. Admiral Lisa Brooks received the first message from the aliens. The voice that came through the speakers was cold and mechanical, translated through machines that removed all emotion from the words. Primitive. Species called human. You must now bow down to the Galactic Empire. Your world will become part of our territory. Fighting back is useless and will cause your complete destruction. You have 72 of your planet's days to surrender without any conditions. Hologram showed the alien leader, Supreme Commander Veltar, was a tall lizard-like being with scales that changed from deep purple to black. His eyes were cold yellow, and when he spoke, his sharp teeth were visible. Your species looks good for workers and soldiers. Those who obey will be moved to mining planets and military bases. Your planet's materials will be taken for the Empire's growth. This is not a discussion. This will happen. President Maria Santos called an emergency meeting of the Global Defense Council within hours. Leaders from every nation gathered in an underground shelter beneath Geneva. Their faces were serious as they watched the alien fleet stay in position above Earth. Dr. Alex Turner, humanity's top alien expert, had been studying the intercepted messages for weeks. They have done this before, he told the council. We found similar demands sent to 17 other star systems in the past 10 years. Every time the species either gave up right away or was completely wiped out within days. General Robert Hayes hit his fist on the table. Then we know what we face. They expect us to give up like every other species they met. The technology difference is huge, warned Dr. Sarah Kim, head of Earth's space defense program. Our best ships can barely travel between planets. Their smallest fighters are stronger than our entire fleet put together. But Commander Pete Johnson, a tough veteran of the Mars colonial wars, stood up with fire in his eyes. I have seen what happens when bullies think they can push people around. Sometimes the smaller fighter hits back harder than anyone expects. The debate went on for hours. Some wanted to surrender right away, saying that staying alive was more important than pride. Others, led by President Santos herself, refused to consider giving up. Our ancestors fought tyrants with old guns against cannons, with bows against gunpowder, with stones against steel, Santos said. We are not the first humans to face impossible odds, and we will not be the first to surrender without a fight. The vote was close but clear. Humanity would fight back. As news of the decision spread across Earth, something amazing happened. Instead of panic, there was determination. Instead of fear, there was defiance. Factories that made consumer goods began making weapons instead. Scientists who worked on theory suddenly found their research getting money and support. Citizens who never held weapons began training with whatever they could find. Jake Morrison, now promoted to lead the quickly made Terran defense fleet, spoke to his crew as they prepared for what many thought would be humanity's last battle. "They think they know us," he said, looking out at the alien fleet that still filled the sky. "They think we are just another primitive species that will kneel when faced with bigger guns. They are about to learn that humans do not kneel. We stand up. We fight back. And we never give up." The 72 hours passed like a countdown to the end of the world. During this time, humanity worked harder than ever before. Every factory, every lab, every military base pushed to create weapons that might help against the aliens. Children were moved to safe places. Soldiers practiced with new equipment. Engineers worked around the clock to improve Earth's defenses. Dr. Kim's team made important discoveries by studying pieces of alien ships that had been detected near the outer planets. The alien technology used quantum fields for communication and power. Their ships were fast and heavily armed, but they followed predictable patterns based on fighting species that used similar tactics. "They expect us to fight like everyone else they conquered," Dr. Kim reported to the Defense Council. "Big fleets facing each other in space. Ground armies in formation. Standard military doctrine. What if we do not fight the way they expect?" asked Colonel Dan Murphy. "Then we might surprise them," Dr. Kim replied. "But it would mean abandoning everything we know about warfare and trying something completely new." President Santos looked around the room at Earth's military leaders. "How long do we have to prepare for something new?" 6 hours, Admiral Brooks replied. The final preparations were desperate and creative. Luna Base on the Moon positioned every railgun, missile battery, and experimental energy weapon they had. Commander Kate Williams had turned the lunar installation into one massive weapons platform aimed at the alien fleet. On Earth, cities were evacuated not to avoid the fighting, but to make the fight more effective. If the aliens wanted to capture population centers, they would find empty buildings. If they wanted to control resources, they would find facilities that had been stripped bare or booby-trapped. The plan was simple and insane. Humanity would not fight a conventional war because they could not win a conventional war. Instead, they would fight the kind of war that no galactic empire had ever faced before. A war where the rules changed constantly, where the enemy was everywhere and nowhere, and where surrender was simply not a option. When the deadline arrived, Supreme Commander Veltar expected the usual response from a conquered species. Surrender broadcasts from the government, white flags from major cities, and the collapse of organized resistance that happened with every other species the Empire had defeated. Instead, the humans answered with weapons. Fire. The attack came from Luna Base. Every weapon humanity had, built or borrowed, was fired at once at what appeared to be the alien command ship. The assault was perfectly timed and aimed at what seemed to be the most important target in the alien fleet, the Empire's shields. Absorbed the attack easily, but Veltar found himself surprised despite the pointless gesture. In 300 years of conquest, no species had ever fired the first shot. "Interesting," he said to his tactical officer. "Begin the bombardment. Target their major population centers first." But as the alien weapons charged up and prepared to turn Earth cities into glass, something else happened. Across the planet, in caves and bunkers and hidden bases, humans began the strangest war in galactic history. A war where being outgunned was the starting point, not the ending. President Maria Santos stood in the reinforced command center, buried 3 miles beneath the Nevada desert, watching the final preparations for humanity's most desperate gambit. Above her, Empire orbital platforms were charging their world-killing weapons. In 72 hours, every inch of Earth's surface would be reduced to radioactive glass. But Santos was not watching the countdown to Earth's destruction. She was watching the countdown to something else entirely. "Prometheus is fully operational," reported Dr. Sarah Kim, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what they were about to attempt. "All network nodes are synchronized. Quantum processing arrays are stable. We have complete infiltration of the Empire communication grid." The Prometheus protocol had evolved far beyond its original conception as Earth's last line of defense. Over 6 months of desperate fighting, it had become something unprecedented in galactic history. A viral computer program designed specifically to infect and convert alien technology. The concept was deceptively simple. Every piece of Empire technology relied on quantum encrypted communication systems to coordinate with their vast military network. These systems were supposed to be absolutely secure, protected by encryption that would take conventional computers millions of years to crack, but humans did not use conventional computers anymore. Every electronic device on Earth had been repurposed as part of a massive distributed processing network. Smartphones, gaming systems, car computers, smart appliances, anything with a processor had been recruited into the largest computing project in human history. The network was managed by a team led by tech entrepreneur Mike Chen, who had transformed his global server infrastructure into the backbone of humanity's cyber warfare division. More importantly, humans had something no other species had ever possessed: experience with dealing with computer viruses. Earth's internet had been a chaotic battleground of malware, security breaches, and digital warfare for decades. Human programmers had learned to create, detect, and defend against hostile code that could adapt, evolve, and spread through networks in ways that constantly surprised their creators. The Empire's computer systems had never faced anything like human-designed malware. "Sir, we are ready to initiate final phase," reported Lieutenant Colonel Janet Smith, the project's military coordinator. "All resistance cells are in position. The virus is loaded and targeted, but once we release this, there is no going back." Santos nodded. The Prometheus virus was not designed just to disrupt Empire communications. It was designed to completely subvert them. Instead of simply jamming alien signals, the virus would take control of Empire systems and turn them into extensions of Earth's defense network. Every Empire ship, every occupation force communication array, every orbital weapon platform would become a node in humanity's resistance network. The aliens would find themselves fighting not just human insurgents but their own technology. "There is something else," added Dr. Kim. "We have been analyzing the Empire's historical data, and we have discovered something significant about their expansion pattern." She activated a holographic display showing the Empire's territorial boundaries across the galaxy. They do not just conquer individual species. They absorb entire regions, integrating every world within a given area into their administrative structure. Based on their communication intercepts, Earth is intended to be the final conquest in this sector. "Which means," Santos asked, though she suspected she already knew the answer, "which means the Empire is planning to use Earth as a staging ground for administering 17 other conquered species across 43 star systems. They are routing all regional command and control through the orbital platforms they have established here." The implications were staggering. The Prometheus virus would not just affect the Empire forces occupying Earth. It would propagate through the entire regional command network, potentially disrupting Empire operations across dozens of worlds and hundreds of billions of conquered beings, ma'am. We are talking about the possibility of destabilizing a significant portion of the Empire's administrative structure, Colonel Smith pointed out. This could trigger revolts on worlds that have been under Empire control for decades. Santos looked at the tactical display, watching the countdown to Earth's sterilization continue its relentless progress. They had 60 hours left. Then we had better make sure it works. The activation of Prometheus began at precisely midnight, Greenwich Mean Time. Across Earth resistance, cells that had been hiding in caves, bunkers, and ruins simultaneously activated improvised transmitters that began broadcasting the virus directly into Empire communication networks. The effect was immediate and catastrophic for the aliens. Aboard Supreme Commander Veltar's flagship bridge officers watched in confusion as their tactical displays began showing impossible readings. Empire ships were reporting conflicting positions, weapon systems were targeting friendly vessels, and communication between fleet elements was becoming increasingly garbled. "Sir, we are receiving contradictory orders from High Command," reported his tactical officer. "Fleet Command is ordering us to abort the sterilization, but Sector Command is ordering immediate implementation." Veltar's experience told him this was some kind of human cyber attack, but the scale seemed impossible. Isolate all external communications. Switch to backup systems. But the backup systems were already compromised. The virus had not just infiltrated the Empire's communication networks, it had learned to replicate itself using the quantum processing power of their own ships. Each Empire vessel was now unknowingly helping to spread the very virus that was subverting its operations. On the surface of Earth, the effects were even more dramatic. Empire occupation forces found their equipment turning against them in ways that defied explanation. Weapons that had been working perfectly suddenly refused to fire on human targets but continued to work fine against alien personnel. Communication systems began broadcasting human resistance propaganda instead of Empire military communications. Even environmental systems in Empire installations began creating conditions that favored human physiology over alien requirements. But the virus's most devastating effect was not on Earth at all. It was spreading through the Empire's quantum communication network at the speed of light, jumping from system to system across their entire regional administrative structure. Kepler 442b, a water world where the aquatic hydrants had been enslaved for mining operations, the Empire's orbital control platform suddenly began broadcasting something unprecedented. Instructions for revolution translated into perfect Hydran language patterns. On Gliese 667 cc, the silicon-based crystalline collective found their Empire overseers, equipment shutting down en masse while automated. Systems began producing weapons suitable for crystalline physiology and tactics. Dozens of worlds across the sector species that had been conquered decades earlier suddenly found themselves receiving detailed tactical information about Empire weaknesses, communication frequencies they could use to coordinate resistance, and most importantly, proof that the Empire could be defeated. The virus was doing more than disrupting Empire operations. It was teaching conquered species how to fight back using lessons learned from humanity's own resistance. Within 48 hours of Prometheus activation, Veltar was receiving reports of coordinated uprisings on 14 different worlds. His regional command structure was in complete chaos. His fleet was operating with compromised systems, and his ground forces were fighting equipment that seemed to have developed a mind of its own. But the most shocking development came from an unexpected source. "Sir, we are receiving a transmission from the Andromedan Council," reported his communications officer. "They are requesting immediate diplomatic contact with the human leadership." The Andromedan Council represented the only major galactic power that had successfully resisted Empire expansion. For centuries, they had maintained an uneasy truce with the Empire, neither side willing to risk the massive casualties that full-scale war would entail. Now they were asking to speak with the primitives from Earth. "Put it through." Veltar ordered, his tactical mind already grasping the implications. The holographic image that appeared showed Ambassador Zarathi, the Andromedan Council's senior diplomatic representative. Her crystalline features were as unreadable as always, but there was something different in her multifaceted eyes. "Supreme Commander, we wish to establish formal diplomatic relations with the human resistance movement. We believe there may be opportunities for mutual cooperation in addressing our common concerns regarding Empire expansion policies." Veltar felt something he had never experienced in 3 centuries of conquest: the possibility of defeat. The humans had not just survived the Empire's assault. They had turned it into a galactic political crisis that threatened the very foundations of Empire power, and they still had 20 hours left before the sterilization was scheduled to begin. The message reached President Santos through a communication channel that should have been impossible. A direct quantum link from the Andromedan Council transmitted through hijacked Empire communication arrays and delivered by systems that were simultaneously under attack by the same technology they were using to facilitate diplomacy. "President Santos." Ambassador Zarathi's crystalline voice carried an undertone of something that sounded almost like admiration. "Your species has accomplished something we believed to be impossible. You have forced the Empire to negotiate." Santos looked at the holographic display showing the ambassador's insectoid features, trying to process the magnitude of what was happening. Around her, the command center buzzed with activity as technicians monitored the continuing spread of the Prometheus virus, and military officers tracked the growing chaos in Empire operations across the sector. "With respect, Ambassador, we have not forced anything yet," Santos replied. "They are still preparing to sterilize our planet in 18 hours. That is precisely why we are contacting you now. The Empire has requested Council mediation in resolving what they are calling the Earth situation. They are prepared to offer terms." Dr. Sarah Kim looked up from her monitoring station. Madam President, we are getting reports from 14 worlds where active resistance is now ongoing. The virus has propagated beyond anything we projected. We may have accidentally started a sector-wide revolution. Santos felt the weight of unintended consequences settling on her shoulders. They had been fighting for Earth's survival. They had not intended to destabilize an entire region of the galaxy. What kind of terms? She asked the ambassador. Withdrawal of all Empire forces from your system. Recognition of human territorial sovereignty. Compensation for damages inflicted during the occupation. Zarathy paused, her compound eyes reflecting, light in patterns that might have indicated amusement. And most significantly, they are prepared to offer humanity full membership in the Empire, as equals, rather than subjects. The command center fell silent. After months of desperate resistance, the Empire was offering not just survival but partnership. There is, of course, a condition, the ambassador continued. You must cease your cyber warfare operations immediately and assist in restoring stability to the affected systems. Santos looked around the command center at the faces of the people who had fought so hard for humanity's freedom. Colonel Dan Murphy, scarred from months of guerrilla warfare. Dr. Kim, exhausted from maintaining the technical systems that had made their resistance possible. Admiral Lisa Brooks, who had lost 3 ships and most of her fleet defending Earth. Can we have a few minutes to discuss this? Santos asked. Of course, but I should mention that several of the affected species have also requested diplomatic contact with Earth. They appear to be interested in discussing what they term human resistance methodologies. After the connection closed, the debate was immediate and intense. We take the deal, argued General Robert Hayes. We have accomplished the impossible. Earth is free, humanity survives, and we get to be players on the galactic stage instead of victims. And we abandon every other species that is fighting for their freedom because of what we started, Colonel Murphy shot back. We have given them hope. We cannot just turn around and help the Empire put them back in chains. Dr. Kim pulled up a tactical display showing the current status of the Prometheus virus. The situation is more complex than either of those options suggests. The virus is now self-sustaining across the Empire's regional network. Even if we wanted to shut it down, we probably could not. What do you mean? Santos asked. I mean, the virus has evolved beyond our original programming. It is learning from each system it infiltrates, adapting to new forms of alien technology, and developing capabilities we never built into it. It is not just disrupting Empire operations anymore. It is actively teaching resistance tactics to conquered species based on analysis of our own methods. The implications were staggering. Humanity had created something that was spreading human concepts of freedom and resistance across the galaxy, species by species, world by world. Ma'am. Admiral Brooks spoke up. We are receiving direct communications from 7 different resistance movements. They want to coordinate operations and share tactical information. Santos realized they were facing a choice that would define humanity's role in galactic civilization. They could accept the Empire's offer, secure Earth's freedom, and become partners in maintaining the status quo that kept hundreds of species enslaved. Or they could continue down a path that might lead to galactic war but might also lead to freedom for species that had been conquered long before humanity even knew other life existed. Get me a secure channel to all resistance movements, she ordered, and open a diplomatic link to the Andromedan Council. If we are going to change the galaxy, we need allies. What followed was the most complex diplomatic negotiation in galactic history. Over the next 12 hours, as the Empire's sterilization deadline approached, a new political structure began to emerge from the chaos. The Andromedan Council offered to host a galactic peace conference with Earth as one of the primary participants. The Empire, facing potential revolution across multiple sectors as the Prometheus virus continued to spread, agreed to a ceasefire in exchange for good faith negotiations. Most importantly, the newly liberated species began forming their own collective bargaining unit, with human advisors helping them coordinate their demands and tactical operations. The final agreement, hammered out as Empire weapons platforms powered down just 3 hours before the sterilization was scheduled to begin, was unlike anything in galactic history. The Terran Accords established Earth as the capital of a new political entity, the Free Systems Alliance. Humanity would serve as the military and technological backbone of a coalition of species dedicated to resisting empire expansion and protecting the rights of developing civilizations. The empire would withdraw from all systems where populations voted for independence, and future territorial disputes would be mediated through the Andromedan Council rather than resolved through conquest. Most significantly, the Prometheus virus would be maintained as a permanent safeguard against future empire aggression, but humanity would work to modify it from a weapon of chaos into a tool for facilitating communication and cooperation between resistance movements. 6 months later, Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES New Liberty, humanity's first purpose-built diplomatic vessel, watching as representatives from 37 different species arrived at the orbital station that had been constructed in Earth's orbit. The first Galactic Freedom Council was convening, and humanity, the species that had been facing extinction less than a year ago, was hosting it. "Admiral Brooks to bridge," came the familiar voice over the communication system. "We have just received word from the outer colonies. The Rigel system has voted to join the alliance. That brings us to 43 member species." Morrison smiled as he looked out at the stars where human ships now flew alongside vessels from dozens of different worlds, all united by a simple principle that humanity had carried into space: the right to refuse to kneel. The Empire still existed, still controlled vast regions of the galaxy, and still posed a threat to free civilizations everywhere. But they had learned something that would forever change the balance of galactic power. Humans did not fight the way other species fought. They did not surrender when facing superior odds. They did not accept defeat as inevitable. And most dangerously of all, they were very good at teaching these concepts to others. The galaxy would never be the same. As the New Liberty took its position at the head of the Alliance fleet, Morrison received a message from President Santos, now serving as the first Secretary General of the Free Systems Alliance. "Jake, you asked me once what makes humans different from other species. I think I finally have an answer. We are the species that turns impossible odds into a starting point. We are the species that refuses to accept that the way things are is the way things have to be. And now, thanks to what we have started, we are not the only species that thinks that way anymore." The message ended with Earth's new diplomatic signature broadcast across the galaxy in hundreds of languages. "Humanity stands with all free beings. None shall kneel, none shall fall alone." In the depths of space, the Empire's remaining fleets regrouped and planned their response to this unprecedented challenge to their authority. But for the first time in their imperial history, they were facing an enemy that grew stronger with each battle, that turned every defeat into a lesson, and that had something the Empire had never encountered: the unwavering belief that freedom was worth any price.